The white silk caught the light like a lie I'd never seen coming. I stood frozen in the doorway of my sister's spare room, one hand still on the brass knob, the other clutching a stack of folded towels I'd come to drop off. The dress hung at the back of the closet, half hidden behind winter coats and a cardboard box labeled Christmas 2019. But it wasn't the dress itself that stopped my heart. It was the tag still dangling from the zipper. A bridal boutique in town. The one I'd walked past 100 times. The one I'd never stepped into because I was already married. I knew that tag. I knew the style. I'd seen it in a magazine years ago, back when Mark and I were planning our wedding. Vera Wang, it read. Size 6. My size. Not hers. My sister Lila was downstairs humming along to the radio, making coffee like it was any other Sunday. She'd asked me to put the towels away while she finished breakfast. Top shelf, Clara, she'd called up the stairs. Her voice light, the same voice that used to sing me to sleep when we were kids and Mom worked nights. Reached out and touched the fabric. Cool. Crisp. New. The kind of new that still smelled faintly of the boutique's lavender sachets. My fingers trembled against the beading along the neckline. Tiny pearls hand-sewn. The same pattern I'd circled in that magazine. The one I'd shown Mark and said, someday, if we ever renew our vows. He'd laughed then. Kissed my forehead. Said, you in anything white would stop traffic, Clara. I pulled my hand back like I'd been burned. The dress wasn't mine. But it was meant to be. I don't know how long I stood there. Long enough for the coffee aroma to drift upstairs. Long enough for Lila to call my name again, softer this time. Clara, you okay up there? I closed the closet door, quietly, like I was hiding evidence. But some things, once seen, can't be unseen. I walked downstairs on legs that didn't feel like mine. Lila smiled at me over the rim of her mug, her dark hair pulled into a messy bun, the same way she'd worn it since high school. You look pale, she said. Sit. I made your favorite. Oat milk latte, extra foam. I sat, and I smiled. Because that's what big sisters do, even when the world tilts sideways. The house smelled like cinnamon and wet leaves that October morning, the way it always did when the furnace kicked on for the first time each fall. I remember the exact sound. A low, reluctant groan from the basement, then the rush of warm air through the vents that made the curtains in the kitchen flutter like they were waving hello. Mark was already at the table, sleeves rolled up, reading glasses perched on the end of his nose, scrolling through emails on his tablet. He didn't look up when I came in, but he reached out with his left hand, the one with the faint scar across the knuckles from the time he tried to fix the garbage disposal, and rested it on my hip as I passed behind him. Morning. Babe, he murmured, voice still gravelly from sleep. You left the porch light on again. I know, I said, leaning down to kiss the top of his head. His hair smelled like the cedar shampoo we'd been using since our honeymoon in Oregon. I like seeing the pumpkins lit up when I wake up. He grunted, amused. You and your ambiance. I smiled and moved to the counter where the coffee was already brewing. The machine hissed and gurgled like an old friend clearing its throat. Outside the window, the maple in the front yard had turned the color of burnt honey, and every time the wind moved through it, a few leaves let go and drifted down onto the lawn like slow-motion confetti. This was us. This was normal. Mark and I had been married 12 years. Not the kind of marriage that made it into magazines. Nobody was posting filtered photos of us sipping mimosas on a yacht, but the kind that worked. We had a system. He handled the bills and the oil changes. I handled the grocery lists and the school permission slips. We met in the middle on everything else. He still opened doors for me. I still left sticky notes on his steering wheel when he had early meetings. Drive safe. Love you more than coffee. We had 2 kids. Ellie, 10, with her father's stubborn chin and my mother's green eyes, and Jonah, 7, who collected rocks the way other kids collected Pokemon cards. Our house was a 1970s split level in Maple Ridge, the kind of neighborhood where people waved from their porches and left casseroles on your doorstep when someone died. The carpet in the hallway was wearing thin near the top of the stairs, and the kitchen tiles had a faint crack shaped like Florida. but it was ours. Paid off last year. Mark had carried me over the threshold again that night. Both of us laughing like idiots while the kids filmed it on my phone. Lila lived 10 minutes away. In the little blue bungalow our parents left her when they moved to Arizona. She was 34, 4 years younger than me, and still single, though not for lack of trying. She'd dated a string of men who were either too old, too broke, or too obsessed with CrossFit. I'd stopped keeping track after the guy who proposed with a ring pop. Lila worked part-time at the library and part-time at the yarn shop downtown, which meant her house always smelled like paper dust and lavender wool. She came over every Sunday for dinner. Always. No exceptions. That morning, she arrived at 9:17 right on time, carrying a Tupperware of her famous pumpkin bread and a bottle of Prosecco for later. Her hair was in that same messy bun, and she had a smudge of flour on her cheek like a kid who'd been baking with ghosts. "Clara, your hydrangeas are obscene," she announced, kicking off her boots in the foyer. "I'm jealous. Mine look like they're auditioning for a horror movie." I laughed and took the bread from her. "You want obscene? Wait till you see the electric bill." Mark looked up from his tablet and grinned. "Lila, you're early." "Early is on time. On time is late. Late is unacceptable," she recited, dropping her purse on the bench. It was something our dad used to say. She said it every week. Ellie thundered down the stairs in mismatched socks, Jonah right behind her, both of them shouting about who got the last waffle. Lila scooped Jonah up like he weighed nothing and spun him until he squealed. Mark caught Ellie mid-jump and pretended to drop her, which made her shriek with delight. I stood there in the middle of it all, holding the warm Tupperware against my chest, watching my family orbit around each other like planets that had finally found their sun. Later, after the dishes were done and the kids were sprawled on the living room rug with coloring books, Lila and I sat on the back porch with mugs of tea. The air was crisp enough to see our breath. She pulled a blanket over our knees, the one I'd knitted the winter Mom had pneumonia, and leaned her head on my shoulder. "You okay?" she asked quietly. I nodded. "Just tired." "Jonah had nightmares again. About the teeth?" "Yeah. He thinks they're going to fall out in his sleep and roll under the bed." Lila laughed softly. "Kids are weird." We sat in silence for a while, listening to the wind chimes Mark had hung last summer. They were made of old spoons and forks, and every time the breeze moved through them, they clinked like distant dinner bells. "You and Mark seem good," she said after a minute. "We are," I said. "And I meant it." She squeezed my arm. "I'm proud of you, you know. For building this. For keeping it together." I turned to look at her. Her eyes were the same hazel as mine, but softer somehow. Like she'd never quite learned how to guard them. "You'll find it too," I told her. "Someone who looks at you the way he looks at me." She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Maybe," she said. "Or maybe I'll just keep stealing your kids and your pumpkin bread recipe." I laughed and rested my head against hers. That was us. That was normal. The kind of normal you don't question until it's gone. Sunday dinners were sacred. By 4 o'clock, the house smelled like garlic and rosemary, the oven ticking as the roast settled, and the kids had been banned from the kitchen twice for trying to sneak gravy with spoons. Mark set the table with the good plates, the ones with the tiny gold rim we only used for holidays and Lila's birthdays. He hummed while he did it, some old Springsteen song he swore was playing the night we met at that dive bar in Portland. I caught him swaying his hips once and flicked a dish towel at his backside. "Careful," I warned. "Ellie's got her phone out." He grinned, unrepentant. "Let her post it. Caption, Dad's still got moves." Lila arrived with a bottle of red and a paper bag of dinner rolls from the bakery on Elm. She kissed Mark on the cheek, quick, sisterly, and he ruffled her hair the way he'd done since she was 16 and needed a ride to prom. She swatted his hand away, laughing, and followed me into the kitchen. "Tell me you made the mashed potatoes with the skins on," she said, already lifting the lid off the pot. "Always," I said. "You're the only person I know who eats potato skins like they're candy," she winked. "Fiber, Clara. It's all about the fiber." We moved around each other like dancers who'd rehearsed this routine for decades. I stirred the gravy. She sliced the rolls and arranged them in the wicker basket with a sprig of parsley on top. Mark poked his head in, stole a roll, and retreated under a hail of playful threats. The kids set their own places, Ellie folding napkins into clumsy swans, Jonah lining up forks like soldiers. At the table, we held hands. Mark said grace the way his father had taught him, short, grateful, a little embarrassed by the ritual but doing it anyway. Lila squeezed my fingers twice, our old signal from childhood. I'm here. The roast came out perfectly pink in the center. The gravy had a hint of orange zest because I'd read somewhere it brightened the flavor. Jonah talked with his mouth full about a rock he'd found that looked like Abraham Lincoln. Ellie rolled her eyes so hard I thought they'd stick. After dessert, Lila's bread pudding with bourbon sauce, Mark and the kids cleared the table while Lila and I stayed put. Feet tangled under the bench. The kitchen light was warm and low, the kind that made everyone look kinder than they were. You're quiet tonight, I said. She shrugged, tracing the rim of her wine glass. Just thinking about Mom's birthday. It's next month. Dad wants to do something big, I nodded. He mentioned a cruise, Lila snorted. Dad on a boat? He'll spend the whole time convinced the captain's trying to mutiny. We laughed. And for a moment it was just us again. 2 girls in footy pajamas, whispering under the covers while thunderstorms rattled the windows. Later, Mark walked Lila to her car. I watched from the porch, arms wrapped around myself against the chill. He opened her door same as he did for me. She hugged him, longer than usual maybe, and then waved at me through the windshield as she backed out. Her taillights disappeared around the corner and Mark stood there a second longer, hands in his pockets before coming back inside. Everything okay? I asked. He nodded, kissed my temple. She's just lonely. That's all. I believed him. The weeks slipped by in their familiar rhythm. Mark left for work at 6:45 every morning, thermos in one hand, my kiss on his cheek. I drove the kids to school, stopped at the grocery store where the cashier still called me Han, and spent afternoons folding tiny socks and answering emails for the PTA. Lila texted me memes about cats and wedding dresses. Mark brought home takeout on Thursdays so I wouldn't have to cook. We watched the Great British Bake Off on the couch, my feet in his lap, his thumb tracing circles on my ankle. One Saturday in November, the 4 of us raked leaves into a pile big enough to bury Jonah. Ellie jumped in first, shrieking as the leaves exploded around her. Mark tackled me next, both of us laughing until our sides hurt. Lila showed up with hot cider and a bag of marshmallows, and we roasted them over the chimenea until our fingers were sticky and the sky turned the color of a bruised peach. That night, after the kids were asleep, Mark and I sat on the back steps with the last of the cider. The air smelled like wood smoke and frost. You ever think we're too lucky? I asked. He looked at me, eyes soft in the porch light. Every day, I leaned into him. His sweater was soft, worn thin at the elbows. Promise me we'll always be this stupidly happy. He kissed my hair. Promise. I believed him. The signs were there, I suppose. The way Lila's laugh lingered a beat too long when Mark told a joke. The way he'd check his phone and smile at something I couldn't see. The way she started wearing the perfume I'd given her for Christmas. The one Mark said smelled like summer on my skin. But love is blind in the small moments. It's only hindsight that sharpens the edges. The first crack appeared on a Tuesday in early December, the kind of gray morning where the sky looked bruised and the coffee tasted like regret. I was in the laundry room sorting whites from colors, the dryer humming like a distant beehive, when Mark's phone buzzed on the counter. He'd left it there while he showered, something he almost never did. The screen lit up with a text preview. Lila, can't stop thinking about last night. Same time tomorrow? My stomach did a slow, sick roll. I stared at the words until they blurred. The shower was still running upstairs, water drumming against tile. I told myself it was nothing. Lila had been over for game night. We'd played Scrabble until midnight, eaten too much popcorn, laughed until Jonah fell asleep on the rug. Last night could mean anything. A joke, a meme, a plan to wrap Mom's birthday gift. But the words sat there, glowing, innocent and damning. I put the phone back exactly where it had been, screen down, angled toward the coffee maker. My hands shook as I folded one of Mark's t-shirts, the one with the faded logo from the brewery where we'd had our first date. The cotton smelled like him, like us, like safety. He came downstairs whistling, hair damp, towel around his neck. "You see my gray hoodie?" he asked, kissing my cheek as he passed. "Bottom drawer," I said. My voice sounded normal. I was proud of that. He found the hoodie, pulled it on, and grabbed his phone without a second glance. "Lila says hi," he added, thumbing through notifications. "She's bringing those ginger cookies you like later." "Great," I said. The word tasted like ash. That afternoon, I picked the kids up from school and drove the long way home, past the park where the holiday lights were already strung between the trees. Ellie chattered about her diorama of the solar system. Jonah wanted to know if reindeer poop was magical. I nodded in all the right places, but my mind was stuck on that text. Same time tomorrow. Same time as what? Lila arrived at 6 with a tin of cookies and a smile that didn't quite fit. She hugged me too tight, her scarf smelling like the yarn shop, wool and vanilla. "I burned the first batch," she confessed, setting the tin on the counter. "These are the survivors." Mark ruffled her hair again. "We'll take 'em." Dinner was spaghetti and meatballs, the sauce simmering with too much garlic because I'd lost count of the cloves. We ate in the dining room because the kids insisted on using the fancy napkins. Lila sat across from Mark, same as always, but I noticed things now. The way she passed him the Parmesan without being asked. The way his knee brushed hers under the table and neither of them moved away. The way she laughed at his story about the client who'd tried to pay in Bitcoin, laughed a little too loud, a little too long. After the kids were in bed, the three of us sat in the living room with mugs of decaf. The Christmas tree lights blinked red and green across Lila's face. She was telling a story about a library patron who'd tried to check out a book with a raccoon in it, something about a prank gone wrong. Mark was doubled over, tears in his eyes. I smiled, but it felt like stretching taffy. When Lila left, she hugged Mark again. Longer this time. Her cheek against his shoulder. "Thanks for listening," she murmured. "Any time," he said. I stood at the door watching her car pull away, the taillights winking out like dying stars. That night, I lay awake beside Mark, listening to his breathing even out. The clock on his nightstand glowed 1:14. I thought about the text, about the way Lila's eyes had flicked to him when she thought I wasn't looking. About the ginger cookies still warm in the tin. I told myself I was being paranoid. Sisters borrow each other's husbands for advice all the time. For comfort. For laughs. Mark had always been Lila's safe place, especially after Dad's heart scare last year. She'd called him crying at 2 a.m. from the hospital parking lot. He'd driven her home, made her tea, stayed until she fell asleep on the couch. That's all this is, I thought. Grief. Loneliness. Nothing more. But the doubt had taken root. Small. Insidious. Like mold behind wallpaper. The next day, I found myself watching them. Not obviously, just glances. The way Mark's hand lingered on Lila's back when he helped her with her coat. The way she leaned into it. The way he didn't pull away. At pickup, I saw Lila's car in the school lot. She was early, unusual for her. She waved at me through the windshield, then got out and hugged Ellie like they hadn't seen each other in years. Jonah ran to her, arms wide. She scooped him up, spinning him until he giggled. Mark's truck was already there. He'd left work early. Said he had a headache. I watched from my car as he walked over to them, hands in his pockets, smiling that easy smile. Lila said something I couldn't hear. He laughed, threw his head back. The sound carried across the lot, bright and sharp. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. That night, I made excuses. Said I had a migraine. Went to bed early. Lay in the dark, listening to Mark brush his teeth, the familiar rhythm of it. Spit, rinse, gargle. He slid into bed beside me, arm heavy across my waist. "You okay?" he whispered. "Fine," I said. "Just tired," He kissed my shoulder. Love you. Love you too. But I didn't sleep. The doubt grew quietly, the way frost creeps across a window pane, one delicate line at a time until the whole view is clouded. I started noticing the small absences. Mark's phone, once left charging on the kitchen counter without a second thought, now lived in his pocket or face down beside his plate. When it buzzed, he'd angle the screen away, thumb hovering like he was deciding whether to answer. He'd always been open with me, passwords shared, location on, but suddenly there were silences where there used to be stories. Lila's visits shifted too. She used to text before coming over. Now she'd just appear, letting herself in with the spare key she'd had since college. "Hope you don't mind," she'd say, kicking off her boots. I was in the neighborhood, but the yarn shop was 20 minutes away and the library closed at 5. I'd smile and offer coffee, watching the way she moved through my house like she belonged in it more than I did. One Thursday, I came home early from the grocery store, forgot the coupons, turned around halfway there, and found them in the living room. The TV was off. The lights were low. Mark sat on the couch, elbows on his knees, head in his hands. Lila was beside him, one hand on his back, rubbing slow circles. They didn't hear me at first. The plastic grocery bags rustled when I set them down, and they both startled like kids caught stealing cookies. "Clara," Mark said, standing too fast. "You're back early. Forgot the list," I said. My voice sounded far away. Lila's hand dropped to her lap. Mark had a rough call with a client. I stopped by to drop off those books Ellie wanted. There were no books on the coffee table." Mark rubbed the back of his neck. "Yeah, tough day." I nodded. Went to the kitchen, put the milk away. The fridge hummed too loud. When I came back, Lila was slipping on her coat. "I should go," she said. "Early shift tomorrow." She hugged me, quick, perfunctory, and was gone. Mark stood in the doorway, watching her car pull out. "She's just worried about me," he said. "Work stress." I believed him, or tried to. But the next morning I found a receipt in his coat pocket. A coffee shop downtown, 2 lattes, 9:47 a.m. He'd told me he had a breakfast meeting with investors. The coffee shop didn't open until 10. I folded the receipt into a tiny square and tucked it into my jewelry box, under the velvet tray where I kept Mom's pearl earrings. I didn't know why. Evidence, maybe. Or just proof that I wasn't crazy. The holidays loomed. Mom's birthday cruise was booked. Dad sent itineraries. Lila texted group chats about matching swimsuits. Mark helped her pick out a new phone plan. Said hers was hemorrhaging data. They sat at the kitchen table. For an hour, heads bent over screens, laughing at something I couldn't see. When I walked in, they looked up like I'd interrupted a private joke. "Inside tech support," Mark said, grinning. Lila rolled her eyes. "He's overcharging me by the minute." I poured myself water, drank it standing at the sink. The glass left a ring on the counter. I wiped it away with my sleeve. That night, I dreamed of the wedding dress. Not the one in Lila's closet. I hadn't seen it yet. But mine. The one I'd worn 12 years ago, simple satin with lace sleeves. In the dream, I was walking down the aisle, but the pews were empty. Mark stood at the altar in his tux. But when I reached him, he turned, and it wasn't his face. It was Lila's. Smiling. Serene. Holding my bouquet. I woke up gasping. Mark stirred beside me. "You okay?" he mumbled. "Bad dream," I whispered. He pulled me close. His skin was warm, familiar. I pressed my face into his shoulder and tried to memorize the smell of him. Cedar. Coffee. The faint trace of the cologne he'd worn since our first anniversary. The next clue came wrapped in tinsel. We were decorating the tree, our annual chaos of tangled lights and arguments over whether the star went on crooked. Lila arrived with a box of ornaments she'd found in Mom's attic. "Thought the kids would like these," she said. Inside were the glass balls we'd painted as kids, lopsided snowmen, a reindeer with 3 legs. Jonah squealed. Ellie hung hers carefully, tongue between her teeth. Mark and Lila strung the lights together. She held the strand while he wrapped it around the branches, their fingers brushing every few seconds. I watched from the couch, untangling tinsel, and saw the way she looked at him when he wasn't looking. Soft, hungry, like he was a language she'd been studying in secret. Later, when the kids were asleep and the tree glowed in the dark, Mark poured us wine. Lila stayed. We sat on the floor, backs against the couch, passing the bottle. The fire crackled. Bing Crosby crooned about chestnuts. "You two are so lucky," Lila said suddenly. Her voice was thick. "This house, the kids, each other." Mark reached over and squeezed her knee. "You'll have it too." She smiled, but her eyes filled. "Maybe." I watched his hand on her leg, watched it linger, watched her lean into it, just a fraction. I excused myself to check the dryer. Stood in the laundry room with my hands pressed to my face, breathing in detergent and warm cotton. The doubt was no longer a crack. It was a canyon. The dress found me on the last Sunday before Christmas, the day the sky hung low and white, pressing snow against the windows like a secret it couldn't hold much longer. Mark had taken the kids to the hardware store for a new shovel. Ours had snapped the night before under the weight of the first real storm. Lila had texted that morning, "Can I borrow your red scarf, the one with the fringe? Mine's in the wash." I told her to come by any time. The spare key was under the frog. I was folding laundry in the guest room. Mark's sweaters, Ellie's tights, Jonah's endless parade of dinosaur socks, when I noticed the closet door ajar. A sliver of white peeked out from behind the coats. I thought it was the tablecloth I'd stored for Easter. I pushed the coats aside. The dress hung there like a ghost that had learned to sew. Vera Wang. Size 6. Pearl beading along the neckline, in the exact pattern I'd sketched on a napkin the year we renewed our vows in the backyard. The tag still fluttered from the zipper. $4,200. Paid in full. Receipt dated 3 weeks ago. My knees gave out. I sat hard on the carpet, the scent of lavender sachets and new silk filling my lungs until I couldn't breathe. The receipt trembled between my fingers. The boutique's logo, a tiny silver bell, glinted like an accusation. Downstairs, the front door clicked open. Lila's boots on the mat. "Clara? You home?" I shoved the receipt into my pocket, closed the closet, stood in the hallway with a smile stitched on like it belonged there. "Up here," I called. My voice cracked on the second word. She appeared at the top of the stairs, cheeks pink from the cold, scarf already around her neck. My scarf, the one Mark had bought me in Montreal. "Found it," she said, twirling the fringe. "Looks better on me, right?" I laughed. It sounded like breaking glass. We went downstairs. She made tea, chamomile, 2 sugars, the way I liked it before I switched to oat milk. She hummed while the kettle screamed. I watched her hands, the way they moved with the same grace they'd had since childhood, arranging cups on saucers like she was hosting a tea party for dolls. My dolls, my cups, my life. Mark and the kids came back an hour later, snow on their boots, cheeks red. Jonah carried a plastic sled like a trophy. Ellie had hot chocolate mustaches. Mark kissed me hello, tasted the cold on his lips, and I wanted to scream into his mouth. "Do you taste her too?" Lila stayed for dinner. We ate chili and cornbread. The kids argued over who got the last piece. Mark refereed with the patience of a saint. Lila laughed at all the right times. I watched her watch him. Watched the way her eyes lingered on the hollow of his throat when he swallowed. Watched the way he didn't notice. After they left, I put the kids to bed. Read the Polar Express twice because Jonah begged. Tucked Ellie's hair behind her ear and promised tomorrow we'd make paper snowflakes. Closed their doors. Stood in the hallway with my back against the wall, the receipt burning a hole in my pocket. Mark was in the shower. I could hear the water. I went to our bedroom, opened his nightstand drawer. His phone was there, charging, screen locked. I knew the code, our wedding date. My thumb hovered. I typed it in. The text thread with Lila was pinned at the top. Lila, 3 days ago. I can't stop thinking about the dress. Do you think she suspects? Mark. She's clueless. Always has been. Lila. I feel guilty. Mark. Don't. This is bigger than guilt. Lila. When? Mark. After the cruise, Mom and Dad will be gone. Kids at camp. We tell her then. There were photos. Lila in the dress, standing in her bedroom mirror. The angle was Mark's, his reflection faint in the glass behind her. Another of them kissing, her hand on his chest, wedding rings glinting. A third, the two of them in our bed, sheets tangled, my pillow under her head. I dropped the phone. It hit the carpet with a soft thud. The shower shut off. Mark's footsteps, the creak of the bathroom door. Clara? He called. I picked up the phone, locked it, put it back exactly where it had been. My hands didn't shake. They were steady, cold. He came in wearing flannel pants, towel around his neck. You okay? You look... I'm fine, I said. Just tired. He kissed my forehead. Come to bed. I nodded, lay beside him in the dark, listened to him fall asleep, waited until his breathing evened out. Then I got up, went to the guest room, opened the closet again, took the dress down. The silk was heavier than I expected. I held it against me in the mirror. It fit like it had been waiting. I hung it back up, closed the door. Downstairs, I made cocoa I didn't drink. Sat at the kitchen table with the receipt spread out like evidence in a trial. The boutique's number was printed at the bottom. I stared at it until the numbers blurred. At 2:17 a.m., I called. Bridal on Main, a sleepy voice answered. We open at 10. This is Clara Brennan, I said. My voice was calm. I believe my husband purchased a wedding dress from you. Vera Wong, size 6, 3 weeks ago. A pause. Let me check. Yes, paid in full. Pickup scheduled for January 5th. Cancel it, I said. Ma'am, it's custom. Cancel it, or I'll be in tomorrow with the police. She canceled it. I hung up, drank the cold cocoa, went back to bed. Mark stirred when I slid under the covers. Where'd you go? Couldn't sleep, I whispered. He pulled me close. Love you. I closed my eyes. Love you too. The next morning, the house woke up the way it always did. Jonah's feet pounding down the hall, Ellie's alarm blaring some pop song about heartbreak, Mark's coffee grinder growling like a bear with a grudge. I moved through it all on autopilot. Pancakes, orange juice, backpacks, kisses at the door. Mark's hand on the small of my back as he left for work. See you tonight, babe. His lips brushed my temple. I smelled the cedar on his skin and wanted to vomit. Lila texted at 9:03. Lila. Coffee later? Need to talk about Mom's gift. I stared at the message until the screen dimmed. Then I typed, me. Come at 11, kids at school, Mark at work. She replied with a thumbs up emoji. I spent the next 2 hours cleaning like a woman possessed. Scrubbed the stove until my knuckles bled. Windexed the windows until they squeaked. Folded every towel into perfect thirds. When the doorbell rang, the house smelled like lemon and bleach and the lie I was about to live. Lila stood on the porch in my red scarf, snowflakes melting in her hair. You look amazing, she said, hugging me. Did you do something different? New detergent, I said. She laughed and stepped inside, kicking off her boots. I love that smell. Like a hotel, we went to the kitchen. I poured coffee into the good mugs, the ones with the tiny chip on the handle that only I ever noticed. She wrapped both hands around hers like she was cold. So, she started, I was thinking we get Mom that necklace she circled in the catalog. The pearl one. Split the cost? I nodded. Sounds perfect, she sipped. Watched me over the rim. You're quiet. Long week. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Her fingers were warm. Mine were ice. You'd tell me if something was wrong, right? I looked at her then. Really looked. The faint freckles across her nose. The way her left eyebrow arched when she lied. The tiny scar on her thumb from the time we tried to make caramel and burned the pan. My little sister. My best friend? The girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms and whisper, "Don't let the lightning get me." I found the dress, I said. The mug slipped from her fingers. Coffee splashed across the table, dark and spreading like blood. She didn't move to clean it. Clara, in your closet. Vera Wang, size 6, the one I wanted for our vow renewal. Her face went white. It's not what you think. Then tell me what it is. She opened her mouth. Closed it. Looked at the coffee pooling around her saucer. Mark and we didn't mean for it to happen. The words hit like fists. I gripped the table edge. Say it. We're in love, her voice cracked. It started last year, after Dad's surgery. You were so busy with the kids, the hospital. He was there for me. We were both scared. One night we talked too long. One kiss turned into, Stop! My voice was steel. You're wearing my scarf. Sitting in my kitchen. Drinking from my mug. And you're telling me you're in love with my husband. Tears filled her eyes. I tried to end it, I swear. But he said he's leaving you. After the cruise? He's filing. The dress? It was supposed to be for our wedding. In April, somewhere quiet. Just us, I laughed. It came out sharp, ugly. You bought a $4,000 dress to marry my husband while I'm still wearing the ring he gave me. She flinched. I know how it sounds. Do you? I stood. The chair scraped back. Do you know what it feels like to see your sister in the bed you made with your own hands? To see him smile at you the way he used to smile at me? She was crying now, silent tears tracking down her cheeks. I never wanted to hurt you, but you did. I pulled the receipt from my pocket, slid it across the table. Paid in full. With our joint account, her eyes widened. He said it was from his bonus. There was no bonus. My voice shook. There was a maxed-out credit card and a lie about a work trip to Denver. She covered her face with her hands. Clara, please, get out. She stood slowly, like an old woman. I'll fix this. I'll tell him it's over. No. I stepped between her and the door. You don't get to fix this. You don't get to decide. You lost that right the first time you let him touch you. She reached for me. I stepped back. Don't. She left without her boots. I watched her walk barefoot through the snow to her car, the red scarf trailing behind her like a wound. I locked the door. Leaned against it. The house was silent except for the tick of the grandfather clock in the hall. I slid down until I sat on the mat, knees to chest, and cried the way I hadn't since Mom's miscarriage when I was 12. Deep, wrenching sobs that tore at my throat. When Mark came home, the kids were at a play date. I'd picked them up, dropped them at Sarah's, come back alone. He walked in whistling, snow on his shoulders, grocery bag in hand. Got the good ice cream? He called. Double fudge. He stopped in the doorway. The coffee stain still darkened the table. Lila's mug sat cold. My eyes were swollen. What happened? He asked. I held up his phone. The screen showed the photo of them in our bed. His face went slack. The bag slipped from his fingers. Ice cream rolled across the floor. Clara, sit down. He sat. I told him everything. The dress, the texts, the boutique, Lila's confession. I watched the color drain from his face, watched his hands clench and unclench on the table. When I finished, the silence stretched like a wire about to snap. I can explain, he started. Don't. I stood. Pack a bag. You're leaving tonight? He looked up, eyes pleading. The kids will be fine. Because I'm their mother, and I'm not going anywhere. He opened his mouth, closed it, stood slowly. I'm sorry, he whispered. You're not sorry, I said. You're caught. He went upstairs. I heard drawers opening, the zipper of his duffel. 20 minutes later, he came down with a bag and his laptop. He paused at the door. I loved you, he said. You loved the idea of me, I corrected, until something shinier came along. He left without another word. The door closed softly behind him. I stood in the empty kitchen, the ice cream melting into a brown puddle, and felt the first crack of something new. Not broken. Not yet. Just beginning. The house was too quiet after he left, the kind of quiet that presses against your eardrums and makes you hear your own pulse. I stood in the kitchen doorway, staring at the puddle of melted double fudge ice cream, the grocery bag tipped on its side like a wounded animal. The clock above the stove ticked 6:47. The kids would be home in 40 minutes. I had 40 minutes to decide what kind of mother they would come home to. I started with the practical. Wiped the floor with paper towels until the tiles gleamed again. Threw the ruined ice cream in the trash, tied the bag tight. Washed Lila's mug twice, scrubbing until the chip on the handle looked raw. Then I went upstairs. Mark's side of the closet was half empty. The hangers swung like hanged men. His cologne still lingered, cedar and betrayal. I opened the bottom drawer, the one where he kept the good sweaters, and found the velvet box I'd seen him hide last month. Inside, a pair of diamond earrings. Not for me. The card read, "For my future wife. April 12th. The date was written in his handwriting, the same loops and slashes he used on the kids' lunch notes. I closed the box. Put it back. Closed the drawer, downstairs. I made a list on the back of an envelope. Lawyer, bank, kids locks, Lila, I. Underlined lawyer 3 times. Sarah dropped the kids at 7:30. Ellie ran in with a glitter slime masterpiece. Jonah carried a pine cone painted gold. They didn't notice the missing truck in the driveway, or the way my smile felt stapled on. I fed them macaroni from the blue box, let them watch 1 extra episode of Wild Kratts, tucked them in with extra kisses and promises of pancakes tomorrow. When the house was dark, I called Jen. She'd been my study buddy in college, divorce attorney now. Still answered on the second ring even though it was 10:15. Clara? Her voice was sleep rough. What's wrong? I told her everything. The dress, the texts, the earrings. My voice didn't shake once. When I finished, she was quiet for a long beat. You want to file first or wait? She asked. First, I said. Tomorrow. Done. I'll have papers by noon. Joint account? Freeze it. Consider it frozen. She paused. You okay to drive? I'm not the one who should be worried about driving. She laughed, soft. That's my girl. Call me when you wake up. I hung up. Went to the garage. Found the spare key to Mark's truck on the hook by the door. Took it. Locked the garage. Changed every lock code on the house. Front door, back door, garage. The alarm chirped its new song, EO42Q5, the day Ellie was born. At 11:42, my phone buzzed. Mark, I'm at the motel on 5th. Can we talk? Please, I didn't answer, Lila. I'm outside. I can't leave it like this. I looked out the window. Her car idled at the curb, headlights off, exhaust curling into the cold. I opened the door. She stood on the porch in socks, coat unbuttoned, face blotchy. I ended it, she said before I could speak. I told him it's over. I swear, I stepped aside. She came in, shivering. We stood in the foyer, the grandfather clock ticking like a heartbeat. You don't get to end it, I said. You don't get to decide when the damage stops. I know. Her voice cracked. I know. I led her to the kitchen. Poured 2 fingers of the bourbon we saved for Christmas. She took it with shaking hands. Drink, I said. She did. I sat across from her. Tell me everything. From the beginning, she did. The hospital parking lot. The 2 a.m. tea. The first kiss in her car after he drove her home. The way it snowballed. Texts, lunches, afternoons when I thought he was at work. The dress fitting she scheduled when I was at the dentist. The plan to wait until the cruise so the kids wouldn't suspect. Every word was a needle. I let them prick. Let them bleed. When she finished, the bottle was half empty. Her eyes were red. I hated myself, she whispered. Every time. But I couldn't stop. I nodded. You will now. She looked up, hopeful. You're moving out of the bungalow, I said. By Friday. I'll pay the lease through March. After that, you're on your own. Clara, I'm not done. You will not see the kids until I say. You will not call. You will not text. You will not drive past this house. If you do, I'll get a restraining order. And I will tell Mom and Dad everything. Her face crumpled. Please don't. You did this, I said. Not me. She stood, wobbled. I'm sorry, was all she could manage. I walked her to the door, watched her drive away barefoot again. Back inside, I opened the safe in Mark's office, took the title to the house, the kids' passports, the emergency cash, locked it again, set the combination to Jonah's birthday. At 2:03 a.m., I texted Mark. Me. Papers tomorrow. Do not come home. Do not call the kids. Lawyer will contact you. 3 dots appeared. Vanished. Appeared again. Mark. I never meant. I blocked him. Then I went to the guest room, took the dress down one last time, held it against me in the dark. The silk whispered against my skin like a secret finally told. I folded it neatly, placed it in a garbage bag, tied it tight. Tomorrow it would go to the thrift store on Elm. Someone else's dream. Morning came in pale slices through the blinds, the kind of light that makes everything look bruised. I was up before the kids, coffee already bitter on my tongue, Jen's email glowing on my laptop. Papers attached. Sign, scan, return. I'll file by 10. I printed them in the office, the printer wheezing like it resented the job. 3 copies. My signature looked foreign, too neat, too final. Ellie patted in first, hair a bird's nest, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Where's Dad? Work trip, I lied. The words tasted like pennies. He'll call tonight. Jonah followed, dragging his stuffed triceratops. Can we have chocolate chips in the pancakes? Extra, I promised. We ate at the table, syrup pooling in the cracks. I watched them lick their fingers and felt the first real stab of fear. How do I keep their world from cracking open? I pushed it down, 1 hour at a time. At 8:15, I drove them to school. The drop-off line snaked around the block, exhaust curling in the cold. Sarah waved from her minivan. I waved back, smile locked in place. When the doors closed behind them, I sat in the silent car and let one tear fall. Just one. Then I wiped it away and drove to the bank. The teller, Marisol, knew me by name. Morning, Mrs. Brennan. How's the holiday baking? Behind schedule, I said, sliding the freeze request across the counter. Joint account, credit cards, savings. She didn't blink, just stamped, signed, handed me receipts. Effective immediately. Back home, I called the locksmith. All locks, today. He quoted 300. I paid over the phone. While I waited, I boxed Mark's remaining clothes. The sweaters that smelled like him. The tie he wore to Ellie's baptism. The running shoes with the hole in the toe. I labeled the box Goodwill and set it by the door. Then I opened his nightstand again. Found the hotel keycard from Denver. The one that wasn't a work trip. I snapped it in half. The locksmith arrived at noon, 2 guys in Carhartts, boots leaving snow on the mat. They worked fast, new deadbolts, new keypad, new keys on a ring shaped like a sunflower. Lady who lived here before you had the same idea, one said, grinning. Smart. I tipped them 20 each. Jen called at 1:07. Filed. He's been served at the motel. Wants to meet. Neutral ground. Tell him the park. Tomorrow. 3 p.m. Kids have chess club. Done. You want me there? No. I need to see his face. I spent the afternoon with the kids' baby books. Ellie's first word. Dada. Jonah's hospital bracelet still curled like a ribbon. I tucked them into the fire safe with the house title. Then I baked. Snickerdoodles. The kitchen filled with cinnamon and the low hum of the oven. Normal smells for a day that was anything but. Mark texted from a new number at 4:22. Mark, I'm outside. Please. I looked out. His truck idled at the curb, wipers pushing snow. He stood on the porch in the same coat he'd worn the night he proposed, hands shoved deep in pockets. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. "The locks are changed," I said. He flinched. "I deserve that. You deserve worse." He looked older, eyes red, stubble silver at the temples. "Can we talk?" "5 minutes." I stepped onto the porch, closed the door behind me. The cold bit through my sweater. "Talk." I ended it with Lila. Last night. She's moving to Aunt Ruth's in Portland. "Good. I don't want the divorce. You don't get to want." He swallowed. "The kids? We'll see you when the counselor says. Supervised. You lost the right to tuck them in." His shoulders sagged. "I messed up, Clara. I know. But 12 years doesn't erase 12 months of lies." Snow collected on his lashes. "I'll do anything. Therapy, sell the truck, move back in the garage." "No." My voice was ice. "You don't live here anymore." He reached for me. I stepped back. "Don't." He dropped his hand. "I love you." You loved the idea of a new life more. Silence stretched. A neighbor's dog barked. Somewhere, a shovel scraped pavement. "I'll be at the park tomorrow," he said finally. 3 p.m. I went inside, locked the door, leaned against it until his truck pulled away. That night, I let the kids FaceTime him from my phone. Ellie showed him her chess trophy. Jonah made dinosaur noises. Mark's face filled the screen, eyes glassy. "Love you to the moon," he told them. They said it back. I ended the call before he could say it to me. After they were asleep, I opened the garage, took the garbage bag with the wedding dress, drove to the thrift store on Elm. The drop box was lit by a single bulb, snow swirling inside the cone of light. I hesitated. The silk rustled like it was breathing. I shoved it in, closed the lid. On the way home, I stopped at the grocery store. Bought vanilla ice cream, the good kind. Double fudge. The truth didn't stay locked behind new deadbolts for long. It slipped out the way secrets do, in glances at the grocery store, in the hush that fell when I walked into the school pickup, line in the way Sarah's smile faltered when she asked, "Everything okay?" on the 3rd day of Mark's absence. I told the kids first, the way you pull a bandage, slow, steady, no sudden rips. Saturday morning, pancakes shaped like dinosaurs. I sat them at the table with orange juice in their favorite cups, the ones with the chipped handles they refused to retire. "Daddy's going to live somewhere else for a while," I said. My voice didn't shake. I'd practiced in the mirror until it sounded like someone else's. "He still loves you. Nothing changes that. But grown-ups sometimes need space to figure things out." Ellie's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. "Like when Tommy's parents got 2 houses?" "Exactly like that." Jonah's lip trembled. "Will he still come to my t-ball games?" "Everyone." They cried. I held them. Let the syrup get cold. Promised extra stories at bedtime. When they asked about Aunt Lila, I said she was helping Grandma in Arizona. Another lie, smaller than the others, but it sat heavy on my tongue. By Monday, the neighborhood knew. Mrs. Henderson from across the street brought lasagna and a sympathy card that said, "Thinking of you in this difficult time." The mailman lingered at the box, asking if I needed help carrying packages. The PTA group chat went suspiciously quiet after I posted about the spring fundraiser. I didn't hide. Took the kids to the library, the park, the diner on Main where the waitresses still called me Hun. Let people see my face. Tired, yes, but upright. Let them whisper. I'd learned long ago that silence feeds rumors. Presence starves them. Mark moved into the motel permanently. His truck became a fixture in the parking lot, frost on the windshield every morning. Word traveled fast in a town where everyone's cousin worked at City Hall. By Wednesday, his boss called. "Take the week, Mark. Clear your head." Translation: "Don't bring the drama to the office." Lila left on Thursday. I watched from the window as the moving truck backed into her driveway. Two men in coveralls carried out the cedar chest Dad built her in high school, the papasan chair she'd reupholstered in sunflower fabric, the boxes labeled in her neat cursive. She didn't look toward my house once. When the truck pulled away, the bungalow looked smaller, like it had been holding its breath. Mom called that night. Dad's voice crackled in the background, something about the cruise Wi-Fi. "Clara, honey, what on earth is going on? Lila says she's staying with Ruth indefinitely." Mark's not answering. "The neighbors." I told her. Not everything, just enough. The affair, the dress, the divorce. I left out the photos, the earrings, the way Lila's tears had tasted like salt and betrayal when she confessed. Mom was quiet so long I thought the call dropped. "Mom? I'm here." Her voice was thin. "Your father wants to come home." "No," I said. "Stay on the cruise. Enjoy the sun. This is my mess to clean." She cried then. Soft, the way she used to when we scraped our knees. "My girls," she whispered. "My baby girls." After I hung up, I stood on the porch in my coat, watching the streetlights flicker on. The air smelled like snow and wood smoke. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked once and stopped. I felt the weight of every curtain twitching, every phone call being made behind closed doors. Let them talk. The truth was mine now. The town didn't wait long to choose sides. By Friday, the yarn shop where Lila worked part-time had a help wanted sign in the window. The owner, Mrs. Delgado, called me personally. "She gave notice this morning," she said, voice tight. "Said family emergency. I'm sorry, Clara." I could hear the pity through the line, soft as the alpaca skein stacked behind the counter. At the grocery store, the cashier Marisol slipped an extra coupon into my hand. "Buy one, get one on the good coffee." "You deserve it," she whispered. The bagger, a high school kid who'd played t-ball with Jonah, loaded my trunk without being asked. When I thanked him, he mumbled, "My mom says Mr. Brennan's an idiot," and blushed crimson. The kids' school was gentler but no less obvious. Ellie's teacher, Ms. Patel, pulled me aside after drop-off. "We have a counselor available if she needs to talk." Jonah's kindergarten aide hugged me in the hallway, her perfume clouding around us like forgiveness I hadn't earned. The principal sent an email. "Any schedule changes, just let us know." "We're here," Mark's world cracked louder. His firm posted an opening for a junior architect, his exact role. A client pulled a 6-figure contract, citing trust issues. His golf buddies stopped inviting him to Thursday scrambles. The motel clerk, a woman who'd gone to high school with us, started charging him for extra towels. Saturday brought the reckoning I hadn't planned. I was at the diner with the kids, treating them to blueberry pancakes after Jonah's t-ball practice. The bell above the door jingled, and in walked Mark, coat unbuttoned, eyes bloodshot, carrying a stuffed giraffe the size of a toddler. The diner went still. Forks paused midair. The cook's spatula froze over the grill. "Daddy!" Jonah launched himself from the booth. Ellie followed slower, glancing at me for permission. I nodded. They hugged his legs, the giraffe's neck flopping over Ellie's shoulder. Mark's gaze found mine across the checkered floor. 5 minutes? He mouthed. I slid out of the booth. The waitress, Darlene, refilled my coffee without asking. "On the house, hun." Outside, the air was sharp with coming snow. Mark set the kids on a bench by the window where they could see us, giraffe between them like a referee. "I'm moving to the city," he said without preamble. "Apartment. 1 bedroom. Starting Monday." I waited. I quit the firm. Took a pay cut. But it's a clean slate. His breath fogged between us. I told HR everything. "They're letting me go quietly." "No severance," I nodded. "Good," he flinched. "The kids, we'll visit when the counselor signs off. You'll call every night at 7. "No surprises." "Understood." He rubbed his jaw. "Lila's gone." Blocked me. I don't blame her. She's not your concern anymore. He looked at me then. Really looked. "I lost everything, Clara. You lost the right to call it everything. Inside, Jonah waved through the glass. Mark raised a hand. The giraffe's head bobbed. "I'll transfer my half of the savings Monday," he said. "And the truck title. You keep the house." I didn't thank him. Gratitude felt like another betrayal. He hesitated. "I'm sorry. For the diner. For all of it." I turned to go. Paused. "Tell the kids you love them. Then leave." He did. The bell jingled again as he walked out, shoulders hunched against the wind. The diner exhaled. Conversations resumed, softer now. Darlene slid a fresh plate of pancakes in front of me. Extra blueberries, whipped cream, smiley face. "Kids eat free today," she said. That night, the neighborhood Christmas lights blinked on, one house at a time. Ours stayed dark. I strung new ones, white, steady, no twinkle. The kids helped, standing on the porch rail while I held their waists. When we flipped the switch, the maple glowed like a promise kept. Mrs. Henderson brought cocoa. Sarah brought wine. We sat on the porch steps, breath fogging, watching the street settle into its winter hush. "You're stronger than all of us," Sarah said. "No," I corrected. "I'm just done pretending." The town kept talking, but the whispers grew kinder. The lasagna kept coming. The kids' teachers sent art projects home with notes. We love Ellie's smile. Jonah's dinosaur drawings are gallery-worthy. Justice wasn't loud. It was in the small things. The empty motel parking space, the for rent sign on Lila's bungalow, the way Mark's name stopped appearing on the T-ball snack schedule. I didn't gloat. I just lived. Spring arrived the way it always does in Maple Ridge. Slow, then all at once. One morning, the snow was a hard crust on the lawn. The next, the crocuses pushed through like tiny purple fists. I woke to birds arguing in the maple and, for the first time in months, didn't reach for the empty side of the bed. The divorce was final on a Tuesday in April. Jen met me at the courthouse with a paper cup of decent coffee and a smile that said, "You did it." Mark signed without contest. The judge's gavel sounded like a door closing, not slamming. I walked out into sunlight so bright it felt indecent. I kept the house. He kept the debt. The kids kept both parents, just in different zip codes. We agreed on Wednesdays and every other weekend. The first handoff was at the park. Neutral ground, same bench where he'd once told me he was moving to the city. Jonah ran to him with a drawing of a T-Rex in a tie. Ellie hung back until Mark knelt and opened his arms. She went, stiff at first, then melted. I watched from the car, engine running, until they disappeared behind the slide. The first night alone in the house was strange. The quiet had teeth. I made chamomile tea and sat on the porch steps, listening to the sprinkler next door hiss in its circle. The air smelled like cut grass and possibility. I texted Sarah, "Come over. Bring wine." She arrived with a bottle and her dog, who immediately christened my hydrangeas. We drank on the swing, feet dangling, talking about everything except men. Summer came with camp drop-offs and swim lessons. I took a part-time job at the library, Lila's old shifts, ironically. The head librarian, Mrs. Cho, hired me on the spot. "You've got the voice for Storytime," she said. The kids loved it. I read Where the Wild Things Are with growls that made the toddlers shriek. On my lunch break, I shelved books, running my fingers over spines that smelled like paper and glue and second chances. Mark's apartment was 20 minutes away, above a bakery that smelled like cinnamon at 6 a.m. The kids came home with crumbs in their pockets and stories about his tiny balcony garden, 3 tomato plants and a basil that refused to die. "Dad says the red ones are almost ready," Jonah reported. Ellie rolled her eyes but smiled when she thought I wasn't looking. I started running again. 3 miles at dawn, past the diner where Darlene now waved through the window, past the thrift store where someone else's bride was trying on my ghost. My lungs burned in the best way. My legs remembered how to carry me. In July, Mom and Dad came home from the cruise tanned and quiet. They stayed a week. Dad fixed the loose board on the porch without being asked. Mom cooked enough lasagna to feed the block. One night after the kids were asleep, she found me in the kitchen folding tiny socks. "I talked to Lila," she said. I kept folding. "She's in Portland, working at a bookstore." living in a studio the size of a closet. Mom's voice was careful. She asked about you. I matched a dinosaur sock with its mate. What did you tell her? That you're happy, I looked up. Am I? Mom touched my cheek. You're getting there. They left on a Sunday. I stood in the driveway waving until their taillights disappeared, then went inside and baked blueberry muffins from scratch. The kids ate them warm, butter dripping down their wrists. Fall brought soccer games and pumpkin spice everything. Mark came to every match, standing on the opposite sideline in a folding chair, cheering louder than anyone. After one game, Jonah scored his first goal and ran to both of us, arms wide. We high-fived over his head, awkward but real. I joined a book club. The women were kind and sharp and didn't ask questions. We met at the winery on Thursdays, argued about endings, drank too much Cabernet. One night, a newcomer, a sculptor with paint under her nails, asked if I was seeing anyone. I laughed so hard I snorted. Not yet, I said. But I'm open to applications. The kids started calling Mark's place Dad's house without hesitation. They had toothbrushes there, a shelf of books, a nightlight shaped like a rocket. Ellie asked for bunk beds for Christmas. Jonah wanted a dog. I said we'd see. Some nights I still woke at 3 a.m., heart racing, reaching for a body that wasn't there. But the panic passed quicker now. I'd get up, make tea, sit on the porch until the stars faded. The house no longer echoed. It breathed. December rolled in again, softer this time. The maple dropped its last leaves like a slow exhale. I strung the same white lights on the porch, steady and calm, no twinkle to fake joy. The kids hung paper snowflakes in the windows, glitter dusting the floor like stardust. We baked snickerdoodles and left none for ghosts. Mark's tomatoes had lived. He brought a pint to the holiday recital, cherry red and still warm from his windowsill. Peace offering, he said, handing them over in the school parking lot. Jonah ate 3 on the spot, juice running down his chin. Ellie took a photo for her scrapbook. I accepted the rest without comment. The counselor signed off on unsupervised weekends. The first one, I drove them to his apartment with duffels and a bag of homemade cookies. The building smelled like fresh bread and new paint. His place was small but tidy, books stacked by height, a tiny Christmas tree with ornaments the kids had made. Mark had framed their drawings on the wall. I lingered in the doorway longer than I meant to. You kept the giraffe, I said, spotting it on the couch. Jonah's favorite, he replied. His eyes were careful. Thanks for the cookies. The kids hugged me goodbye. Ellie whispered, Call if you get lonely. I kissed her forehead and left before my throat closed. That night, the house was quiet in a new way. Not empty, just waiting. I poured wine, put on Ella Fitzgerald, and danced alone in the kitchen. The floorboards knew my steps. The cracked tile in Florida shape caught the light. I laughed at nothing and everything. January brought a letter. Lila's handwriting on the envelope, postmarked Portland. I almost threw it away. Instead, I opened it over coffee, steam curling between us like a referee. Clara, I write this 100 times and burn them. This one stays. I live in a studio above a bookstore. I shelve poetry at 3 a.m. when I can't sleep. I walk the river every morning and think of you running. I see your face in every strong woman who doesn't flinch. I was jealous. Not just of your life, but of how you lived it. Open, steady, kind. I wanted to be you and hated myself for it. I destroyed the only sister I had to feel bigger. I was small, I'm in therapy. I pay rent. I volunteer at a shelter. I'm learning what sorry means when it costs something. I don't ask forgiveness. I ask that you keep being the light I tried to blow out. The kids deserve it. You deserve it. If you ever want to write back, I'll be here. If not, I understand. Lila read it twice, folded it into the drawer with Mom's old recipes. Didn't answer. Not yet. Spring again. The hydrangeas exploded pink and blue. I planted tomatoes in the backyard. Roma because they hold their shape in sauce. The kids helped, dirt under their nails, arguing over who got to water first. Mark came for Jonah's birthday. We grilled hot dogs, sang off key, watched the boy blow out 8 candles in one breath. When the cake was gone, Mark lingered by the gate. I'm dating someone, he said quietly. It's new. I wanted you to hear it from me. I nodded. Is she kind? She is. Then be kind back. He smiled, small, real. You? Not yet, I said. But I bought a dress. Just for me. Red. He laughed, the sound lighter than I'd heard in years. You'll stop traffic. The kids ran between us, sticky with frosting, pulling us into a messy group hug. We let them. Summer ended with a block party. Mrs. Henderson won the pie contest. Sarah's dog stole a hamburger. I danced with the sculptor from book club. Her name was Mara, hands calloused from clay, laugh like wind chimes. The kids cheered us on. Mark watched from the sidelines, holding Jonah on his shoulders. When the song ended, Mara kissed my cheek. Coffee tomorrow? Yes, I said. Fall painted the maple gold again. I ran 5 miles now, sunrise my witness. The library promoted me to children's coordinator. I read to toddlers who called me Miss Clara and left fingerprints on every board book. Evenings I cooked with the radio on, pasta with the tomatoes we'd grown, basil from Mark's balcony that the kids smuggled home in their pockets. One Sunday, I drove to Portland. The bookstore smelled like coffee and old paper. Lila was behind the counter, hair shorter, eyes older. She froze when she saw me. I set a tin of snickerdoodles down. Peace offering, I said. She cried. I didn't. We sat in the cafe corner and talked about everything except the dress. She showed me her tiny apartment, the river path, the shelter dogs she walked. I told her about the red dress, the tomatoes, the way Jonah now beat me at chess. When I left, she hugged me like she was afraid I'd vanish. Thank you, she whispered. See you at Christmas, I said. The drive home was quiet, windows down, wind in my hair. The maple was bare again, but the porch lights glowed steady. Inside, the kids had left a drawing on the fridge. 3 stick figures under a rainbow. Mom, Dad, Aunt Lila. I left it there. Some wounds scar. Some heal clean. Mine did both. The porch light is on now, steady white, the same one I strung the winter everything broke. I sit here most evenings with a mug of chamomile, watching the street settle into its quiet rhythm. Mrs. Henderson walking her terrier, the mail truck rattling past, the kids' laughter drifting from the backyard where they've built a fort out of old couch cushions and hope. The maple is bare again, but its branches hold the promise of spring like a secret it's willing to keep. I kept the house. I kept the cracked tile shaped like Florida. I kept the chipped mugs and the dinosaur socks and the recipe for snickerdoodles that still makes the kitchen smell like forgiveness. I kept running at dawn, 5 miles now, lungs burning in the best way. I kept the red dress, wore it to Mara's art opening last month and danced until the gallery lights dimmed. I kept my name, my children, my mornings. Mark lives 20 minutes away in a 1-bedroom that smells like cinnamon and second chances. He calls every night at 7, reads Goodnight Moon in the same silly voices he used when they were toddlers. The kids spend weekends there, come home with crumbs in their pockets and stories about basil that refuses to die. We trade them at the park now. No lawyers, no tension, just 2 parents who learned the hard way that love isn't ownership. Lila will be here for Christmas. She's bringing books and a dog-eared apology she no longer needs to read aloud. We'll eat lasagna and argue over whose turn it is to carve the turkey. The kids will call her Aunt Lila again, the way they call the sky blue. Simple, true, without question. I learned that betrayal doesn't end a story. It starts a harder one. That strength isn't loud. It's in the quiet mornings you get up anyway. In the pancakes you flip while your heart is still cracked open. In the way you teach your children that people can break your trust, but never your worth. So here I am, 40, divorced, happier than I have any right to be. The porch light glows. The tea is warm. The world didn't end. It just tilted until I found my footing. If you're sitting in your own wreckage tonight, wondering how the pieces fit back together, start with 1. 1 mug of tea, 1 sunrise run, 1 honest conversation. The rest will follow. Would you have kept the dress? Or burned it? Tell me in the comments. And if this story helped you even a little, hit subscribe. We're all healing, 1 quiet evening at a time.